Before the story begins, let me ask you something. If you enjoy quiet stories, late-night thoughts, and moments that feel a little too real, take a second to subscribe to this channel. Midnight Talks, it really helps the channel grow, and it means more stories like this will find their way to you when the world gets quiet. Now, let's begin. Emily Carter almost deleted the email the moment it appeared on her screen. She stared at it for a few seconds, convinced it had been sent by mistake. Invitations like this were never meant for someone like her. Someone quiet, someone who preferred staying unnoticed. But the sender's name stopped her. Margaret Wilson, her boss. It was an invitation to a company anniversary party, hosted at Margaret's private home. Emily felt a familiar knot tighten in her chest. Events like this always reminded her how small she felt in rooms filled with confident voices and polished smiles. Still, she couldn't say no. Margaret had personally mentioned her dedication during a meeting just days earlier. Refusing the invitation now might seem ungrateful. So, Emily accepted, even though doubt quietly followed her in the days leading up to the party. On the night of the event, she stood in front of her mirror, adjusting a simple blue dress. Nothing bold. Nothing attention-grabbing. She told herself it was just one night, one evening. She would survive, and then forget. But the moment she stepped inside Margaret's home, she felt it. The soft music, the gentle clinking of glasses, the careful way everything had been arranged. It all felt elegant and distant from her own modest world. Emily moved slowly through the room, holding her drink carefully, offering polite smiles. She felt invisible in the way she always did, until something shifted. A calm voice said her name. Not rushed, not distracted, just calm and certain. She turned and saw a man she had never met before. He introduced himself as Daniel Wilson, Margaret's son. He told her his mother had pointed her out earlier, praising her hard work and kindness. Emily didn't know how to respond. Praise was something she was used to earning quietly, not hearing out loud. Their conversation flowed easily, skipping the awkward pauses Emily expected. She spoke about her quiet ambitions, the feeling of being capable of more, yet unsure how to reach it. Daniel listened closely, as if every word mattered. The party continued around them, but it felt far away. When Margaret briefly joined the conversation, Emily became suddenly aware of how unlikely this moment was. As the evening drew to a close, Daniel thanked her for the conversation. He said he hoped they would talk again before he returned to his busy life. Driving home that night, Emily realized something had changed. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like an accident in the room. She felt like she belonged. The next morning at work, her focus drifted. Her mind replayed fragments of their conversation. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. He told her he'd enjoyed talking with her and asked if she'd like to meet for coffee sometime. Emily felt a rush of excitement mixed with hesitation. He was her boss's son. The line between personal and professional felt sharp and fragile. Still, she agreed. They met at a small riverside cafe. As Emily approached, every step felt like stepping into unfamiliar territory. When she saw Daniel already waiting, she felt nervous, but strangely at ease. Their conversation went deeper this time. They spoke about fears they rarely shared, small regret, quiet dreams. Hours passed, unnoticed. Emily realized how rare this kind of connection was, one that didn't demand perfection, one that didn't require masks. Yet the complications remained. She couldn't ignore who he was. When she heard Daniel might be leaving town for another opportunity, urgency stirred within her. She wondered if he felt the same pull, that quiet sense that the world felt less real when they weren't talking. Emily came to understand that some people enter our lives briefly, yet leave lasting impressions. They change how we see ourselves, They opened doors we didn't even know existed. And sometimes, meeting the right person at the wrong moment changes everything. Emily tried to tell herself that nothing had changed, that life was still the same. The same desk, the same routine, the same careful distance she had always kept between herself and the world. But that wasn't true anymore. In the days after hearing Daniel might be leaving town, everything felt slightly off. Conversations at work sounded distant. Time moved strangely, too fast in some moments, painfully slow in others. Emily caught herself replaying small details she hadn't noticed before. The way Daniel paused before answering certain questions, the way his voice softened when he spoke about wanting something more meaningful, though he never named what that was. They continued meeting, but something had shifted beneath the surface. There was more silence now, not uncomfortable silence, thoughtful silence, the kind filled with things neither of them seemed ready to say. One evening, they met again by the river. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the air felt cooler than usual. Emily arrived first this time and sat watching the water, wondering when she had started caring this much. When Daniel joined her, she noticed it immediately. He seemed tired, not physically, emotionally. They talked for a while about small things. Work, the city, memories from childhood. But eventually, the conversation slowed, settling into something deeper. Daniel finally spoke. He told her the opportunity was real, a long-term move, a chance he had worked toward for years. He said it calmly, like he had already accepted it. But Emily heard the hesitation underneath. She didn't respond right away. She stared at the water and felt something ache quietly inside her. She wanted to be supportive, wanted to be reasonable, wanted to be the version of herself who didn't ask for too much, but she had spent her whole life being that person. She told him she was happy for him, and she meant it. But she also told him the truth. That meeting him had changed something in her, that she felt more seen, more real than she had in a long time. Daniel listened the same way he always did, fully, without interrupting. He admitted something then, that he hadn't expected this either, that in a life filled with plans and expectations, Emily had become the one place where he didn't feel like he was performing. The honesty between them felt heavy and fragile. They both understood what was at stake, the boundaries, the complications, the risk of wanting something that didn't fit neatly into either of their lives. After that night, things became quieter. They didn't stop talking, but their messages were shorter, more careful, as if both of them were trying to protect something they didn't know how to hold. Emily found herself reflecting on her past, on how often she had stayed silent, how many times she had chosen safety over possibility. She realized that meeting Daniel hadn't just stirred feelings, it had forced her to confront how small she had allowed her life to become. Margaret noticed the change too. One afternoon, Emily's boss asked her to stay behind after a meeting. Her tone was gentle, curious, not suspicious. She told Emily she had always admired her consistency, her quiet strength. She asked if Emily had ever considered stepping into a larger role within the company. The question stunned her. Emily realized something then. The confidence she had felt around Daniel hadn't stayed there. It had followed her back into her life. She said yes. Not confidently, not boldly, but honestly. As Daniel's departure grew closer, they met one last time before he was scheduled to leave. No expectations, no plans, just time. They walked through the city at night, past places that had become meaningful in such a short span of time. There was sadness, but also gratitude. No promises were made, no dramatic declarations. At the end of the night, Daniel told her something she would carry with her for years. He said, meeting her reminded him that The right moments don't always arrive when life is ready for them. Sometimes they come early, sometimes late, but they always leave us changed. They said goodbye simply. After he left, Emily felt the absence deeply, but it wasn't empty. It was full of something new. She stepped into her expanded role at work. She spoke up more, took up space she once avoided, not because she was fearless, but because she understood something now. Connection changes us. Being seen changes us. And sometimes, the people who don't stay are the ones who wake us up. Emily never regretted meeting Daniel, because, even though their lives moved in different directions, the version of herself she discovered during that time stayed, and that was enough. Sometimes, a story doesn't end with forever. Sometimes, it ends with becoming. Time did what it always does. It moved forward, whether Emily felt ready or not. At first, Daniel's absence felt loud, not in obvious ways, but in small moments. When she reached for her phone without thinking, when she passed the cafe by the river, when something good happened at work and she had no one to quietly share it with. But slowly, the sharpness softened. Emily settled into her new role at the company. It challenged her in ways she hadn't expected. Meetings where her voice mattered, decisions that carried weight, responsibility that once would have frightened her, but now felt earned. She didn't become someone else. She became more herself. There were nights when she still thought of Daniel, not with sadness, but with curiosity. She wondered who he was becoming in a different city, whether he still paused before answering difficult questions, whether he still searched for moments that felt real. They didn't speak often. A message, once in a while. A quiet update. Nothing dramatic. Nothing heavy. Just proof that what they shared hadn't disappeared, even if it had changed shape. Years passed like that. Emily's life filled in new friendships, new routines, a confidence that no longer felt borrowed from someone else's attention. She learned that being seen once could teach you how to see yourself forever. One evening, long after she thought the chapter had closed, she received an unexpected message. Daniel was back in town. There was no urgency in his words, no assumption, just a simple question. Would you like to catch up? Emily stared at the message longer than she needed to. She noticed something surprising. Her heart didn't race. Her breath didn't catch. She felt calm. She said, "Yes." They met somewhere neutral this time. A quiet bookstore, cafe, softer lighting, older versions of themselves. When Daniel walked in, Emily recognized him instantly. And yet, he was different. So was she. Their conversation was easy, grounded. They spoke about work, about mistakes, about the strange paths life takes when you stop trying to control every step. Daniel told her leaving had been necessary. That distance had clarified things he hadn't known how to face before. Emily listened, not as someone waiting to be chosen, but as someone complete on her own. He noticed it too. He told her she seemed steadier, more certain. Emily smiled, realizing it was true. There was no dramatic confession, no sudden realization that everything had been leading to this moment. What existed between them now was quieter, built on respect, not longing. When they stood to leave, Daniel hesitated. He said he was glad they had met when they did, even if the timing hadn't been right. Especially because it hadn't been right. Emily understood. Some connections aren't meant to last forever in the same form. Some exist to change us, then let us go. They parted, with warmth, with gratitude, without regret. That night, Emily walked home feeling something she hadn't expected. Peace. She realized that her story had never been about meeting the right person. It had been about meeting herself at the right moment, and that was the real beginning. Some people come into your life like a turning point, not to stay, but to remind you that your life is still unfolding. And sometimes, that's the most beautiful ending of all.